Hello, everyone, and welcome to another SCJ Marketing Think Tank webinar. That's sometimes a mouthful to say, but it's always a lot of good information and a lot of fun. Today, we're going to be joined by Nicole DeLeon from North Star Inbound to talk about top link building mistakes in-house SEOs make that kill their ROI. And this happens a lot, right? Link building is extremely difficult, very stressful at times, and very in depth and time consuming. So it's very easy to lose your ROI on mistakes that you can make, and we're going to learn all about that today. My name is Brent Satoris. I will be your moderator, and I'm going to let Nicole introduce herself a little bit, and then I'll go through some housekeeping points. Nicole, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole DeLeon, and I'm the owner and lead strategist at North Star Inbound. I am a glutton for punishment because I actually enjoy building links. I'm also involved in content creation and ideation on behalf of our clients. And many, many moons ago, I went to law school and practiced law for a couple years before I realized that digital marketing was much, much more fun.
Awesome. So always a pleasure to kind of have you on here and talk through. I really have always appreciated your approach to link building. I mean, I've known just about most of the link builders in the space, and I really like your kind of approach and strategy. And so I'm excited to hear what you have for us today. Some housekeeping notes. If during the webinar you have any questions or comments, please check the webinar, and inside GoToWebinar, it has a question box in the bottom corner, and you can type your questions there. Throughout the presentation, as we have any referenced links or resources or tools that Nicole mentioned, we will try to drop those into the chat for you. We will have a couple polls during the presentation, which we will pause and allow you to participate. It does help with the presentation, so please take a moment and answer the best you can. After the webinar, please stick around. We have a really quick survey. It's normally less than 5 minutes, and we review this. It comes out in an internal email to us all, including Nicole, and we really kind of look at your feedback to try to improve the webinars. And sometimes, it helps us, to make each one of them a little bit better. So lastly, entire webinar is going to be recorded. It is being recorded, and it will be made available through a recap post on Search Engine Journal. So without any further ado, Nicole, let's dive into learning more about link building.
All right. Thanks, Brent. Okay, so real quick, today we're going to be covering 12 mistakes that I often see in-house SEOs make. And then we're also going to cover how you can avoid them and what to do instead. Over the last 5 years, I've had the pleasure of working with companies both large and small, but I also speak on the phone because I'm the primary salesperson at North Star Inbound. So I talk on the phone to a lot of people who are thinking about outsourcing some of their link building, and so we talk a lot about what their struggles are or what they've done. And so they share with me a lot of tactics and a lot of strategies. So I'm bringing all of this into the webinar today, and hopefully you guys will get some value out of that. All right, so diving right in, the first one is thinking that more is always better. We are huge proponents of long-form content, and we are huge proponents of putting a lot of time and a lot of resources into the content that we create in order to fuel link building success. But that doesn't mean, right? That doesn't mean that that you should just shove as much content in there for the sake of shoving content in there, right? So even with long form content, quality still matters, right? And with data-driven content or like infographics, you want to use only the most compelling data. So this is all easy to say, kind of not so easy to do. So how do we do that? The first thing that you want to do is go through, and anything that strikes you as slightly less relevant or slightly less than core, useful or interesting, just pull that out. So that's usually the easier of the two steps, you'll get a really strong gut instinct about some of these things, and just trust that, right? That is 100% correct, probably 99% of the time. So just gank that content, and then go through. The second thing you want to do is go through paragraph by paragraph, or chunk by chunk, or piece of data by piece of data, or graphic by graphic, and really ask yourself, what are we losing by removing this piece of data? And if the answer is, well, if we remove this piece of data, or if we remove this section, we're sort of losing a slightly different audience that we could be promoting this piece of content to, definitely don't want to get rid of that, right? That section has a very important purpose. If by removing that content you lose relevance or usefulness, you want to keep it. If the answer is we're really not losing very much, then you're really staring at a piece of filler, and you really do want to go ahead and remove that. At the end of the day, linkers are only really going to give you, a handful of seconds of their time before they make up their mind as to whether or not they want to keep reading further or really evaluating your piece. And you want to make sure that they're not spending any time on any filler content. All right, number 2. Forgetting to break things up. So large blocks of content can very easily overwhelm people. And so that's not going to persuade anyone to link, right? So now that you've got, just the facts and only the facts, right? And you've pulled out all the filler content, you're still, if you've created an authoritative guide, or you've got a really great infographic or a study, you're still going to have a lot of content. So you have to break it up, right? The same thing is true when you're looking at design. These really large infographics can sort of get you into trouble because they're super long and they tend to be harder to digest. So instead, for text-based content, you want to mix it up and break it up as much as humanly possible. So you want to bring in design elements. You want to add custom navigation, think about video, think about short graphics, bullet points, just, the works in terms of trying to make pieces more digestible. For graphic and interactive pieces, try not having like that one really super long infographic that in order for someone to view it on one page, it has to be super tiny. Try just breaking it up into different designed assets. We've sort of gone to that method of presenting graphical data, and it's really worked for us for a couple of reasons. One, obviously, like I said, it's much easier to digest. 2, it lets us package facts together and aim them towards like different audiences, right? So it's sort of a potential outreach strategy. Putting these 3 pieces of data together might be more relevant for lifestyle, people who cover lifestyle and relationships. These other 3 pieces of data may be more compelling when packaged together towards people who are covering health, right? So it's sort of a benefit from more than just a user experience point of view. All right. Number 3, obsessing over domain authority or any third-party metric for that matter. So we report domain authority. The industry still demands it. It doesn't mean I don't spend a whole lot of time talking to clients about why this is a terrible idea. Basically what you're doing is you're constraining your opportunities using an objective measure, right? That is very imperfect. So we all know sort of a good link when we see one. I think experienced SEOs, in-house SEOs, we know a good link when we see one. And when you really rely on domain authority or Ahrefs domain rating, or really any of the others, and that's really all you're sort of relying on, you're removing subjective evaluation. The other reason why this is a bad idea is because if you take a step back and you look at your link profile is sort of a living, breathing organism. Some links, some links will last a really long time. Other links will last a short time. Some links will grow in authority, right? Because they'll be on sites that are small today, but are growing and are getting more authoritative in the future. And the opposite is also true. So if you only look at this moment in time and say, I'm only going to build links that are, domain authority X and above, or Ahrefs domain rating X and above, you're really failing to plant seeds, right? So, 5 years from now, a domain that was in the 20s or low 30s, it might be much easier to get a link on that domain today than 2 to 3 years from now when that domain is much more authoritative. And if you plant your seeds correctly, then you're going to be one of the lucky people or lucky domains to have a link on that domain. So it's important not to be myopic about this particular issue. Finally, your link profile kind of looks weird and lopsided. An organic profile has links from the entire internet, not just from the highest of the highest domains. So instead, our motto internally is never, and what we try to encourage our clients to do, is never pass up a good link building opportunity, right? Full stop. We've seen people who had like complex matrices for how they evaluated link prospects, and they had APIs to like Moz and SEMrush for traffic and Majestic. And by the time they were done with all of those ways of evaluating link opportunities, they'd spent a whole bunch of time creating this awesome content, and then they had like 30 sites that they were going to reach out to, right? So always remember that you're not going to convert 100% of your prospects. So if you start with 30, that's probably not going to be enough to call the campaign, a huge success. So by constraining those opportunities that way, you're sort of shooting yourself in the foot. Evaluate sites organically and subjectively. It takes longer, right? That's sort of a human endeavor. But we all know a good link when we see one, and at the end of the day, it's probably closer to what we all should be doing anyway. All right, 4. Failing to create content that is on trend or surprising. So this may seem obvious, but there's a lot of content out there that falls into the cool and interesting category, but it still fails to earn links. And that's because cool and interesting isn't really enough anymore. So no matter what type of content you're creating, you have to be creating something that's different and surprising. So when you're creating long-form how-to guides or informational content, we always strive to find areas that are important but that haven't been covered. So we often will get site owners tell us either, oh man, I never thought to address this issue, and I agree it's important, thank you. Or that they've been searching for the exact type of content that would cover something like this for months, but just haven't found anything. So there's still great, the internet's large, and a lot of content has already been done, but there really are still some greenfield areas out there, or issues that really haven't been covered extensively. That requires research. You really have to get to know the audiences that you are serving very, very well in order to kind of tease those out. For visual content, surprise is everything, right? So infographics that were sort of popular a number of years ago are sort of neat, but they're not cutting through as much as they used to. So you really need, what's working for us is to create data-driven content that contains insights or data that has that sort of surprise factor. It really catches people's attention. You can't always control that. You might conduct a survey or try to run some sort of study, and what comes back isn't as surprising as you might have thought, and that's an issue that we run into sometimes as well. But more often than not, you can sort of think about that as you're creating the study, and sort of ensure that at least something that you create is going to be hot water cooler conversation topics. Oh, it's time for our poll.
Awesome. So let me ask this first one. How are you scaling your link building efforts? First option, we're looking to grow. Second option, we're going to keep them the same. And 3, we got to cut back. Again, the question is, how are you currently scaling your link building efforts? Looking to grow, keeping them about the same, or looking to actually cut back in your link building efforts? I will give everybody a chance to vote. Just a couple more seconds, maybe another 10 seconds. About 65% have voted, and that's going up. Again, this really just helps kind of determine how the tone of the different points are, and also the Q&A. So please take a moment to vote. And I'm going to go ahead and close it out now, and I'll share the results. About 91% looking to grow. I think that's pretty impressive. I don't think it's really shocking to me. I think just about everybody should be looking to grow. You know, as far as authority goes, I see a lot of people that tend to let their efforts scale off, and then all of a sudden they're behind and they're struggling to catch up again. So I think that's a good indicator there.
Right. Awesome. Sounds great. Thanks, Brent. All right. So number 5, ignoring seasonality or timing. So if you're ideating with others and somebody has a great idea for a piece of content, but somebody has sort of the sneaking suspicion or gut feeling that it might do better in the fall, or it might do better in the spring, or it might do better, you know, whatever, right before the baseball season ends or something like that, save it. Because site owners and reporters are thinking the exact same thing as you, and they're not going to cover or link to the content until then anyways. But by then, they've totally forgotten about your content, right? So if you don't properly take seasonality into, oh, okay, sorry, getting a presidential alert, which I'm sure many of you are also getting. If you don't take advantage of seasonality, then you basically, you're going to have a really great piece of content, probably do mediocre, or even potentially risk it totally falling flat on its face. So what you should do is totally save it for that time, but more importantly, if you try actually to use seasonality as a hook whenever possible. So think of seasons, think of every possible season. So there's sports seasons, weather seasons, holiday seasons, election seasons, industry-specific seasons. A seasonal hook can totally push a campaign much further than it ordinarily would go. We had a study that was about people's kind of holiday decor habits, so obviously we ran that. It was a study on general holiday decor habits, but Christmas being one of the most cherished and most important holidays, we decided that we were going to wait and run it heading into Christmas, instead of, you know, something else like Thanksgiving or something like that, right? So you always have to be thinking about seasonality. 6, failing to personalize your outreach. So as much as the industry has been talking about this forever, I have my own sites, and so I get pinged for link requests all the time, and all of those outreach attempts are horrible, right? Hardly anyone reaches out to me with a compelling, I think I saved one, right? Of the hundreds that I've gotten, only one outreach attempt has been personalized. So that's even before I get into this slide, right? Please try, do something to personalize the approach because everything else kind of winds up in the trash. But I wanted to talk about sort of the difference between what I think is kind of standard old form personalization and what I think is working now. So standard personalization is sort of like the one-liner where you tell the site owner how great their last piece of content was and how much you enjoyed it, right? Something along those lines, right? So everyone sort of is expecting this, and so it doesn't really come across as anything other than another sort of mass template. So I just don't see that as being really effective anymore, and it's certainly not something that we're doing at all anymore either. So what should you do instead? So what we do is we create outreach personas the way that kind of the marketing folks in the marketing departments create a marketing persona. So we really spend some time thinking about what are the people that we're going to be reaching out to. We kind of group them together and we think to ourselves, like, what do they care about? What are their likes or dislikes? Are there any funny memes that have just gone across whatever industry they're a part of? Like, we really try to get to know them so that we can come across as different, genuine, part of the club. And so that's the sort of personalization that we're seeing be, much more effective. Do we use the one-liner? Yes, of course we use the one-liner, but the one-liner alone isn't really getting the job done. You really need to spend the time and get to know the people that you're reaching out to. Okay, not segmenting your outreach list. So this is what we don't do. We do not think of everyone that might be interested in our content, lump them all into one list and start sending out. Because failing to segment prevents us from using the persona personalization technique that I just talked about, right? So if everyone's in one group, but we're actually reaching out to like health bloggers and we're also reaching out to fitness bloggers, you're like, health and fitness, that's the same thing. That's why there's an ampersand there. It's actually not. There are people who care about health issues and there are people who care about fitness, and while there might be some commonalities, we actually take the time to get to know all of our outreach personas as much as possible and really try to appeal to what they care about. So again, the way that you do this is just think to yourself, what do these folks really care about? What do they hate? What are they talking about? What's funny? And that's one of the ways that we're really standing out. So a couple of different ways that you can segment is by interest. So I talked about health and fitness. Industry, obviously, geography. There's other ways to segment, but it depends a lot on the kind of campaign that you're running. So the more you're able to segment, obviously you don't want to go so nuts that you're literally creating one template and sending it to 2 people. But the more you segment, the more you're able to personalize, and the better your response rate is going to be. All right, not having an elevator pitch for your content. So an elevator pitch is the shortest, simplest way to convey the unique value proposition for your content. So I learned that when I was in the startup world, but I bring it into outreach, and I bring it into content creation and ideation, right? So if you don't have a good elevator pitch, then you're probably going to be creating templates that are getting ignored a lot of the time. So the typical outreach templates that I receive tell me, hey, I saw that you are essentially a site about X, and you have a page about X, and I have a piece of content about X. And wouldn't it be great? I think your audience would really like it if you link to it. And that's it, right? So that sort of fails at really selling the piece of content. So an elevator pitch has the top 3 selling points of your content. For informational pieces, it's usually like, what problem does your piece solve and for whom? And how is it different from other pieces? For visual content, it's what are the top insights and whose lives are affected and how, right? And some combination of both. So there's some questions in there that apply to both. But those are some questions that you can start asking yourself in order to kind of start to create that elevator pitch. Because at the end of the day, we're marketers and we're selling our content. Okay, 9, failing to consider your outreach strategy during ideation. Most people don't even consider their outreach strategy during ideation, is what I found. And that's really the best time to consider your outreach strategy, because that's how you weed out sort of okay ideas or bad ideas or ideas that really aren't going to be easy to sell to potential linkers. So if you bring your outreach strategy into your ideation session, you'll start to realize things like, maybe my idea is too complex, right? So sometimes we'll be in a circle and we're ideating about content, and person's trying to explain, they have an idea, and somebody will be like, okay, what's the elevator pitch, or kind of that seems convoluted. Can you say it shorter? And if they can't after a little while, then it's too complex of an idea. It's not simple enough to sort of communicate really, really quickly. Maybe it's not as maybe it's not as surprising or interesting as you think, and it falls into the neat category. And again, there are a lot of ideas that we thought were neat, and over the years we realized that neat is just not good enough these days to really cut through. And again, best time to ideate through elevator pitches. If you can't, you don't have to have it nailed down, right? I mean, this is just the ideation part. But if you have no idea what the elevator pitch is going to be during the ideation session, it's probably an indication that it's not an awesome idea. Okay, 10, giving up too early. So most campaigns, or a lot of the clients or prospective clients that I talk to will tell me things like, yeah, we tried that strategy and it just doesn't work for us. And then I'll ask them questions, kind of, well, what did you do exactly, or how did you try it, or how did you adapt? So what I found is that most campaigns are like idea, execution, failure, or success, repeat. And if an idea fails or it starts failing, people are very quick to say, well, that just doesn't work for companyx.com, right? And so if this is you and you don't know why your strategy or execution didn't work, and you know that there are other people who are doing it successfully, right? So this isn't, this isn't a strategy that has been given up on years ago that no one's doing anymore. This is something that you hear others are doing successfully. It's your job to, before you give up totally, is to figure out why it may have failed, and then create a hypothesis, test that hypothesis, try to make some adjustments, and try to get that piece of content or that effort to succeed. And the reason why is because if you don't kind of figure out why it's failing, you have nothing to put back into that feedback loop, right? You're just kind of stuck in this, we did something, we kind of threw it up against the wall, we did our best for a little bit, and it didn't work, and so link building just doesn't work for us, right? And so you do not want to be in that position. So before giving up, you can test things like, if nobody's opening up your emails, obviously you need to change the subject line. If people are opening but not clicking through or responding, maybe you're not offering your prospects the right selling points. So really think about changing that template and those actual selling points, right? You're probably not going to get the results that you're looking for if you're just massaging around the edges. If people are opening and clicking through but not linking, maybe it really is the content, right? People tend to be really quick to blame the content, but if all the emails are going really great, maybe it is the content. So if that's the case, this is hard, but try reaching out to the folks that seem to have the most engagement with your emails, but didn't ultimately link, and try to ask them like, hey, what do you think we could do to make this content better? I'd really like to partner with you. In the beginning stages when you're really trying to figure out what's going to work for you, this is super important. So don't give up until you have some answers. Oh, and it's time for our second poll. I get so into these presentations that those polls always just take me by surprise.
That's awesome. So let me launch the last poll. Are you interested in learning more about link building services from North Star Inbound? My answer would be yes, but you have that as an option for number 1, and number 2 is maybe, but I have some questions. That makes sense. And number 3, not at this time. Again, are you interested in learning more from Nicole and North Star Inbound? Yes, maybe, I have some questions, or not at this time. We'll give everybody a chance to The fun thing for me in my history of link building and everything is I've never wanted to do it myself. I always want a good agency, or a good person out there to handle it, because it's one of those things where people sometimes, same thing with content marketing or a lot of these things, or blogger outreach. It really does take like a bit of a constant effort to kind of get good in some of these areas. And, when you're not really in it that much, you tend to pay the price for it, right? And link building is probably, I don't mind getting into PPC and screwing up and losing $100, but when it comes to link building and how, sketchy that whole space can be, I definitely never want room for error there. Anyway, I'll shut up and close this poll.
No, yeah.
Yes, 32, maybe. I have some questions, and not at this time. Still learning. Understood. Yeah. Understood. Makes sense.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks for participating in the poll, and Brent, thank you for your insights into your personal link building preferences. Okay, number 11, chasing your competitor's link profile. So, this isn't like the worst thing you could possibly do, but at the same time, having the same exact links as your competitor isn't going to necessarily give you the same results as they're having. So, sure, there's some like industry-leading obligatory links that, they have and all your competitors have, you probably need to go out and figure out how to get. But if 100% of your plan is chasing their profile, you're going to hit a dead end pretty quickly, because their list of links is your list of prospects, and you will not have a 100% conversion rate, right? You're going to have a small percentage of those list of prospects actually convert and become links for you. So at some point, you're going to have to develop your own strategy, right? Instead, what you should do is you should use their list of links as intel, right, to understand what's working in this space, right? So check out all your competitors. Hopefully, if you're lucky, they're not all employing the same strategy, and then you'll have some insight as to the different types of strategies that are working in your particular space. And then from there, obviously, you need to develop your own strategy. And maybe it's a similar strategy as theirs, but everybody's going to be doing link building differently. And so you need to figure out what resources and strengths that you have, and develop a content strategy that is going to work for you as you build out your own link profile. Okay, 12. This is the last one, guys. So not diversifying your strategy. So by now, you've done so many of the right things that you have figured out how to, execute one link building strategy super well, right? Link building is hard. You have succeeded. You're building all these awesome links, and nobody's going to blame you for kind of going back to the same well over and over and over again and doing the same thing until basically you can't. But at the same time, you have to keep in mind that the internet is constantly changing, right? And it's really easy to get stuck on that one thing and then turn around and boom, the internet's changed and your strategy isn't working as well as it used to for a variety of reasons. So and then the last reason that this is a mistake is because you're losing out on all these other opportunities that will only be gotten through different strategies, right? There's lots of link building strategies, and so you should try to learn as many of them as possible. So instead, always reevaluate every part of your process, right? So you got to be running away from the herd when you're link building, right? You got to be, evaluating your outreach strategy, how you're creating your content, and always be making every part of your process better so that hopefully nothing changes. Maybe something changes to the point where your competitors that aren't doing this, their lunch gets eaten, but yours doesn't because you were constantly tweaking and constantly changing, improving your content, improving your outreach strategy, and whatnot. But the best thing to do also in addition to that is to branch out and try new strategies, right? If you haven't ever done any digital PR, but you're really good at guest posts or whatever, now's the time to do that, right? You've got a team, they're doing great. So now grab a small little group of resources, maybe it's just one person, maybe it's two or whatever, and try to figure out how you can start building a different kind of link. Get out of your comfort zone and start pushing yourself, and that absolutely is how you will outmaneuver all of your competitors and outrank them as well. So that's it. Those are the 12, and that brings us to the Q&A session.
I should unmute myself first before I start talking. Really great presentation. I always really like the information. I think most people who are listening probably will agree that, this is just one of those areas where as much information as you can get and then the finer little details, the minor little points go a long way. Because even with personalization, I can't tell you how many times I get an email where somebody, as you mentioned, it does a blended approach where they're like, hey, I saw this article you wrote. I thought it was really great. I've written some stuff that's similar to there. Maybe you'd be interested in including it. But where I find that I end up actually linking to people the most is when I get something that is useful to me, where somebody's researched enough to say, okay, Brent Satoris writes a lot about Reddit, right? Or he writes a lot about social and the time of posting or things like that. So I have a really good insight on how to post or how to do something on Reddit, or I've done some statistics that would fit the articles that he's writing. Let me write something for him to have a resource. And a lot of times people will send that and I'll end up writing an article that isn't, look at this thing they wrote, but it takes it into account. I'll end up saying, I'm going to write an article that takes some of this and links back to it, and then maybe finds 3 or 4 other things. Or sometimes I've even written people back and asked for specific quotes and use that. I feel like there's something there, but I definitely think that it's the really subtle minor points that make it work. So I think this is really great information, and we have some really good questions here to dive into as well.
Cool.
Interesting question. Our company is getting around 80 backlinks per month. We think 100 is a good number, but is link building really scalable?
I mean, we scale link building campaigns all the time. I wish this was more interactive because I'd ask. I'm assuming that the person is basically saying that they're getting 80 links per month organically, and they want to try to create a link building campaign internally to build the other 20, I mean, 20 links a month is a fairly modest goal. I think it's really achievable. It also depends what industry you're in. If you sell, turbines, it might, I can see where you might think that it's a little bit more of a challenge, and you're going to have to diversify your approach a little bit. But we have campaigns where we're building 40, 50, 70, 80 links a month for clients. So it's definitely scalable. You just have to look at your processes and have a really great creative team.
Yeah, I think that, just to add to that, if I can throw in a quick thought, it would be that, are there 20 more quality links? Because links are links, they're just, you can go make 100 posts yourself and link to yourself, but that doesn't do anything for you, right? I mean, the real goal of having a link is two parts, right? Authority and also getting traffic. So I would just, ask the question, I would ask yourself the question, is there a space for 20 more quality links, and what do I have to do to get them? But I definitely would agree that you can scale it to any means if you have the capabilities.
Right, absolutely.
Are backlinks from my social sites to my main site considered quality links?
I think that's probably considered linking to yourself. So I wouldn't, I wouldn't consider them spam links, right? So if you have like one Facebook profile and one Twitter profile, and you're using these channels to syndicate your content and trying to get it out there, I don't, Google's not going to penalize you for that. I don't think that's considered a spam link. But at the same time, I don't think that those aren't the kinds of links that are going to really move the needle for you.
And even further on that, since I do a lot of like the social aggregate stuff, I mean, there was a time period when Delicious and Reddit and Dig and all these places actually passed some authority, and you could rank, pretty well off of these type of sites. But at this point now, it's important to understand that even with like sites like Reddit, where you can actually have a link that's followed and it's not your account pointing to your page, but you have to remember there's something like 100,000 new URLs a day on Reddit. And so the link equity that you would actually get to pass from a site like Reddit to your site would be so nominal that it would essentially be worth saying that it's not passing anything. So yes, it's a quality link as far as the quality, but not worth really putting in the list when you're thinking about link building.
Right.
What tools, Nicole, are you using to segment for outreach?
People. That's people. It's not. So we're not cyber stalking each one of our prospects to try to figure out, where they went to high school or anything like that, right? So the first part of it is sort of like we're trying to, if we're reaching out to blogs, we're creating a list. We're trying to create a list of whatever health blogs, right? So that part of it isn't necessarily people looking at each particular blog. We've got a list of prospecting phrases and advanced search operators, and Google really helps with that. But when we're going back to our existing database, so and trying to recreate a list, at that point we probably have some enriched data about each particular prospect over time, especially bloggers and reporters, right? And so the level of segmentation that we can do for something like that is a little bit better, but that is done by people. But again, we're not, we don't have a team of dedicated cyber stalkers that are trying to figure out, everybody's personal history.
Awesome. Great answer. So another question here, and I think we get this a lot. I'm an individual. I'm an entrepreneur, a small business, a startup, and I need to get some links out the gate, right? What are some of the first links I should go for? What's the best links or methods that work for the first couple links I'm going to get?
Some of the best is basically make an exhaustive list of all of the people that have an existing relationship with your business. So your vendors, your customers if you're B2B. So, if you're B2C, individuals by and large probably don't have websites, but if you're B2B, then your customers have websites. Are you involved in the community in any way, such that like you're sponsoring different things, or you've been allowing nonprofits to use your space or anything like that? So think of all of the relationships because a link is really a relationship, right? So you have relationships, or you're creating relationships on a daily basis. So think about all of those, and then think about which are the links that you're going to be able to get if you just ask for one, right? Some people actually list some of their customers somewhere on their site, or some of the better ones or whatever. And if you can't, just ask for them and get them. Think about, are there testimonials that I can provide? Literally every single person that you do business with, right? These days, everybody is using a million apps to conduct their business. So, offer to provide testimonials, offer to, endorse someone in certain ways. You look at all of the organizations that you're sponsoring in some way or another, whether you're providing services in kind or you're providing space, or maybe you're giving a monetary donation to. Make sure that they have a link to you, or ask them if it's okay for them to talk about you and the great work that you're doing in supporting their organization. That's the first place that I would look.
Awesome, great answer. I agree as well. You just have to be creative in that first state. How much focus, like if you find a source that ranks, let me ask this in a different way. If you are prioritizing or thinking about how much effort to put into a specific link, do you put more effort for a source that ranks high for your topic already? I mean, I guess you could also say, do you put more effort into a link that ranks well already?
So I'm assuming that this basically is like you've got a keyword that is important to you, and you're not on the top on the first page, and the number one ranking page is not a competitor, but maybe it's an informational site, right? Do you put in a lot of effort to get a link on that page? The answer is absolutely yes, because that page is going to send you traffic, right? If you sell widgets and the person that ranks number one for widgets is Widget Magazine, and that page is basically a discussion of widgets just like the ones that you sell. There are lots of reasons other than the authority of that page. For why you absolutely need to do everything in your power to get on there, right? That's essentially the equivalent of having that paid ad on top of Google.
Absolutely. This also kind of goes back to the where do you start at? And a lot of times when I'm talking to companies who are getting started fresh, I tell them, look, why don't you go and look at your search results and see where the ranking platforms are. I mean, is there a travel, advisor? Is there, what is it that's ranking that you have a potential to get involved with? Not only from a link building standpoint, but just from a doorway, kind of an opportunity to get traffic exposure. But ultimately that can also lead to links. So definitely looking at that stuff can be helpful. What are the best tools to help identify potential link sources? I know you mentioned using individuals. I definitely think that a human-based kind of approach is safer and more effective. But there's got to be some tools out there that can help get you started, or point you in the right direction, or help segment you, or give you some initial starting points. What do you see out there as tools that kind of help with that?
So especially when you're looking at competitor link profiles, Ahrefs and Majestic are excellent. Moz has just really redone its link profile, and so it used to be, you used to put a URL into Open Site Explorer, which is being deprecated, or maybe it already has been, and you didn't used to get a lot of backlinks, like maybe 10%. But they recently redid it, and I can't remember what the new link is called. The new tool is called, even though I use it. I think it's Link Profiler, but it's one of their new suite of tools, and it is absolutely excellent. And so that's one way to get a list of links. You don't just have to use it for competitors, right? If you are creating a piece of content and you're trying to put together a list of people to reach out to, if there is anything in that space, and again, obviously you need to be creating differentiated content, but if there's anything in that space already that has some backlinks, even if that's not, a competitor, maybe your competitors haven't created a piece of content like this, then you need to be going in and looking at the backlink profile for that page on, with Ahrefs, with Moz, with Majestic, and adding those at least to the evaluation, at least to the list of prospects that some human is going to evaluate. I know, Brent, you were like, there's got to be a place to get yourself started. You should absolutely never, ever, ever just dump this into, some tool that's going to pull email addresses for you automatically and reach out blind, right? A person has to evaluate every link prospect because there's a lot of junk out there.
So give one thing I'd like to throw out there for anybody that's high level or has development capabilities. One of the plaguing issues right now for websites with link building is the fact that links can end up turning bad over time. So you can have a link from 3 years ago, that site sold and somebody else has gone and put something on it. So if you're capable of running a script that kind of, spiders through links coming out of a website, and you're able to determine like warning errors and things that might be problematic, like Google warnings or Chrome warnings, you can identify a list of links that you would actually be helping that person replace. And that could give you an option to not only say, hey, I have a good resource to replace that link that's broken, but you could say, hey, did you know you're linking to some porn? And I think it might be smart for you not anymore. And here, by the way, I have a resource that you could replace it with. You can actually be a little helpful in that regard if you have the capabilities of doing that.
Yep.
What industries do your clients typically come from?
Typically, we don't cater to certain industries. So we've done we have a lot of like clients in the health field. We have a lot of clients in the anything to do with sort of insurance, banking, mortgage. We've had clients in the coupon space. We've had clients. B2B software apps. We've had. We still have. So there's really we don't really specialize. We try to learn every industry, and we have a really good sense of the different strategies that can work for B2B versus B2C, and highly technical versus maybe less so. And so yeah, we've just had a lot of different kinds of clients.
Interesting question. How do you calculate a realistic link acquisition goal?
How do you calculate a realistic link acquisition goal?
Like, I'm going to try to gain 10 links a month. Is that realistic?
Yeah.
How do you gauge that based on staff, capabilities, time, et cetera, et cetera? Imagine.
Oh, based on, okay. So the first place that we start is what we think is feasible, period. So depending on the industry that you're in, different sort of, I guess, link quotas are feasible or not, right? Again, going back to the turbine example, it's probably going to be difficult to create a scalable link building campaign that builds 50 links a month, because turbines just aren't relevant to a whole bunch of different types of sites that are out there creating content and linking to it. Whereas, if you're a site that is about home services or real estate, well, like being a homeowner kind of intersects with just about every other thing in life, right? You know, it intersects with health, it intersects with finance, it intersects with like lifestyle, growing up, getting old. I mean, you know, there's just an infinite number of things and different kinds of audiences that you can reach out to and content that you can create for them. So the first place we start is, what do we think is even feasible? And the way that we do that is we use a little bit of common sense. We also look at competitors, and we try to identify, like, hey, there's got to be somebody that's doing this well, right? And sort of how quickly are they sort of picking up links if it's in an industry that we've just never been in before. So that's where we sort of start the conversation. What's realistic? If you're internal and you're trying to figure out like how to staff around creating a link building quota, we actually have a whole white paper on that. And we actually did a webinar on that with SEJ. I can't remember what it's called, Brent, but I think it was like the first one we did.
Well, definitely. We'll make sure that we get the last two webinars into the recap. And we'll make sure that we get those posted out there for sure.
It is. We outlined it out, and it was 30 minutes of content.
Yeah, it was a really good one too. It was specifically on how to do this, right?
Yeah, you know. Exactly.
So I have a question or two that I want to toss in here because I think this could be helpful for people. What elements of content truly end up getting the link? Is it stats? Is it, you know, graphics? Like, what do you think? You know, you had talked about this in this presentation earlier about, you know, making sure your things have images or making sure you're breaking up infographics. But in your experience right now, is there a specific element or two about content that results in more links?
It depends on the kind of content, but I mean, if I had to use one word and be like really, really general, it's like it's content that really hits it. So what? And so that it goes back to that slide where I was talking about informational content that makes a difference to the site owner's readers. That's impactful, right? So it's informational content. But stuff is dry, it's boring, right? But hopefully you're reaching out to people who have a problem that you've identified and you're solving it with information. And so if you've really created content that is really solving the problem for a group of people, then that's the answer to so what, right? The answer to so what is obvious. And from a like a graphical standpoint, interactive content standpoint, same thing, right? Something has to be. I mean, if you're reaching out to reporters in this news cycle, it is hard, and it is a lot harder now than it was a couple of years ago. And so, you know, you really have to be creating content that is extremely surprising, on trend, has a seasonal hook, and really, really helps reporters sort of fill the constant vacuum that they have where they have this need for content that's going to make a difference. So, you know, I don't know, without like very, very, very specific examples, and I don't even know that examples help, right? Because if you're looking at something that someone else did in the past, it's not going to help you answer the so what question with a piece of content that you're creating now, right?
Do you see people getting links to video? Like, is it count as content, or do you see people tend to bypass the host and end up linking to the provider, like YouTube or something like that? Have you seen anything with video?
Oh, like if you have video and you put it on YouTube, yeah. I mean, the link goes to YouTube more often than not.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking as well. Any offline tactics? I mean, one of the things we always talk about with people in link building is just say, well, you should be talking to your PR team. Are you doing any, like you had mentioned before, any social events or anything like that? What offline tactics kind of work for link building in your experience?
Wait, what do you mean talking to your PR team?
Like, if you're doing charity event
Doing
or if you're
events and
doing
stuff.
local stuff, that's one angle of saying offline, I can do that. But like, should people go into their chamber of commerce and talk to people? Are there things like, offline contests that can be done? Like, what can you do offline, signs or anything that can drive people to actually end up linking to you, if anything?
Yeah, I mean, I think the strategy there is just is doesn't really start with link building because the costs are so high. But I think that if you can, especially for the in-house folks, if you can educate your PR team or your engagement team to always be thinking about links, it's a hugely successful way of getting it done as a secondary benefit, right? If you're going to do an event, that's going to cost you a lot of money and a lot of people and a lot of time. So you really have to ask yourself at that moment, is the link itself really why you're doing it? And if it is, you probably should reconsider. You should be doing events for totally different reasons, right? Those are people that you need to get in front of. It's your core customer, or it sends the branding message that you're trying to send with your brand. And then, the link as a secondary benefit is absolutely what you want to do. It's just like a good sponsorship campaign, right? You shouldn't be pursuing sponsorship links because you're getting the links, right? You should be pursuing sponsorships because you are trying to, primarily because you're trying to engage with those people, either those specific organizations or their audiences, right? So if your core demographic is childless couples, right? Then maybe it's a really good idea to find some animal rescue nonprofits and sponsor them because you want their audience, right? And then, yeah, sure, you'll get the link, right? But you shouldn't be thinking first of the link in those offline opportunities.
Awesome. Great answer. I think that kind of runs us out of time. Nicole, always a pleasure, always great information. Thank you so much for sharing with us. A couple quick last minute comments. We again will have a survey coming up. We would love your feedback. And also, if you notice on the screen, we've started Search Engine Nerds again and just released a new episode, and we're going to try to keep up our cadence of every 2 weeks again. We'll see how we do with that, but definitely up and alive again after 9 months, so check it out. And thanks everyone for joining us.
Thanks, everyone.
Cheers.